So as you know, that a whole lot of drama is happening at the anti-corruption agency IDAC, with Andrea Johnson resigning and a whole lot of other things. In this video, I'm going to take you through a 25-year journey of South Africa's fight against corruption. And if you stay with me all the way till my biblical reaction, you'll have a much better bird's eye view than the average South African. And we need you here because South Africa will prosper. You ready? Okay. Press like, let's go. Let's start back in 2001 when the Scorpions were established inside of the National Prosecuting Authority.
The Scorpions' corruption probe into Deputy President Jacob Zuma has earned them the wrath of some powerful critics. Their very role as crime fighters and their tactics have been questioned.
And they'll never be corrupt. Never.
These powerful critics want heads to roll. In the firing line is Bulelani Ngcuka. The Scorpions fall under him.
I think the fact that all these questions are being raised about the Scorpions unit at this time, the allegations about their Hollywood-style tactics and all of these issues that have come up in the media recently, seems to send out the message that the Scorpions are trying to be silenced. Seems to send out the message that that government is being stung by its own creation.
Special and adequately staffed and equipped investigation unit
It was an
will
act
be
of
established
Parliament in
urgently
1999
to deal
that
with
gave
all
birth
national
to the
priority
Scorpions as a
crimes,
specialized
including
unit.
police corruption.
The Scorpions are closely styled along the lines of the FBI, who trained them. They play up the image of a specialized corps. Then there's the media image.
The whole hype and image around the Scorpions came at a perfect time. The black GTRs, the red badge, the whole image that goes with the Scorpions unit as being the elite crime-fighting unit, and even their motto, feared by criminals, loved by the people, was very successful. I think that's one of the main reasons why the Scorpion, in the public perception, got such incredibly high ratings.
Served in New South Africa in its ongoing transformation.
Do you solemnly swear to perform your function as an employee of the Directorate of Special Operations to the best of your ability? Right hand and say, so help me God.
So help me God.
We will search them out in every nook and cranny. We'll find them. We want to make sure that if there are communities or people out there who believe that in this country there are untouchables, we shall touch them.
Well, indeed, they touched some people in the ruling party that time, the ANC. So 8 years later, the Scorpions were disbanded.
The ANC resolved in Polokwane to push ahead with the dissolution of the Scorpions. The same investigation unit that put together the case against Jacob Zuma and National Police Commissioner Jackie Selebi. The ANC wants the unit disbanded by June. And wasting little time, Safety and Security Minister Charles Ngakula has outlined the plan for their demise.
The Scorpions, in the circumstances, will be dissolved, and the organized crime unit of the police will be phased out, and a new amalgamated unit will be created.
That unit will fall under the command of SAPS. At this stage, it is just a proposal. President Thabo Mbeki's cabinet must still approve it. And then it needs to pass muster in Parliament.
Yep, so the Scorpions were disbanded and replaced with the Hawks. The Scorpions were too independent.
Born after the Scorpions were disbanded, the Hawks were placed in the control of the police, after government said it was too problematic having the Scorpions under the jurisdiction of the MPA. But that move's now being challenged. after the crime-fighting unit's independence was called into question. In December, the Western Cape High Court ruled parts of the legislation governing the Hawks was inconsistent with the Constitution and was unable to ensure independence. Now the Constitutional Court must decide, are the Hawks independent enough to fight crime without fear or favour?
Well, Hugh Glenister fought them when they disbanded the Scorpions. The court said, come back. When the Hawks were being rolled out, went back to court and said, no, they're not independent enough. So then we get Glenister II judgment, where the Concord said corruption has become a scourge in our country and it poses a real danger to our developing democracy. Organized crime and drug syndicates also pose a real threat to our democracy. The amount of drugs confiscated inside our borders testifies to this. And so the Helen Suzman Foundation, which was also on the case, I think submitted an OECD report, and the issue of independence came up there, and this is what was in the judgment. Independence primarily means that the anti-corruption body should be shielded from undue political interference. And experience suggests that it is structural and operational autonomy that is important. In other words, structural autonomy means they can't be reporting to a politician, a minister or someone. They should be able to just function and function effectively. Now, you remember that the Scorpions were structured like the PKTT, in Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's PKTT, where you have an investigator and a prosecutor working together to build a case. And now the comrades never liked that, so they came with the Hawks so they can have a little bit more control. So the judgment says, no, they need to be independent. It is that on a common sense approach, our law demands a body outside executive control, not controlled by the president, not controlled by a minister, to deal effectively with corruption. Now, this was huge that the Constitutional Court had now made it in our jurisprudence that the anti-corruption body should be independent. Of course, they can't tell Parliament exactly how to write the law, but one thing is they must be independent of executive control. So this is where we got the STIRS acronym, where Museneke said that the main criteria for effective anti-corruption agencies are STIRS. So S is for specialization, get guys who specialize. T is training, like the Scorpions were trained by the FBI. I is independence. Like the Scorpions, the ANC was unhappy that they are too independent. R is resources, so they must get proper budget like the Scorpions had with those beautiful Golf 2s back then. And S is also security of tenure. In other words, if politicians get in trouble, they mustn't be able to just get up in Parliament and say, we're shutting you down. Almost like how they can't shut down a Chapter 9. No matter how upset they are with the Public Protector report, they can't shut them down. So STIRS was now in Glenister II. And so the ruling was, it is declared that Chapter 6A of the South African Police Service Act, because now the Hawks come under the police, is inconsistent with the Constitution and invalid to the extent that it fails to secure an adequate degree of independence. And the court sent them back and gave them 18 months to fix the law in Parliament and make sure that the Hawks are independent enough. We are now around 2012. And while they're fixing the law for the Hawks, there is a prosecutor in the NPA who went into Kumba Iron Ore and tried to investigate General Mdluli, and that did not go down so well.
Today, she was cleared of all 15 misconduct charges. Breytenbach has been on suspension for more than a year. Her attorney read out her response.
I'm nevertheless more than elated that I've been vindicated. If I'm allowed to, I will return to my post and continue to prosecute without fear, favour or prejudice, as I've always done in the past. I intend, if allowed to take up the cases which I'm dealing with, and by this I mean all the cases that I was dealing with upon my return to office.
Breytenbach was suspended from the NPA in April last year. Her disciplinary hearing drew wide attention. She maintained she was suspended by the NPA for investigating suspended crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli. Among the 15 misconduct charges laid against Breytenbach was that she refused to surrender her laptop to her employer and deleted documents from the laptop following her suspension. Her disciplinary hearing concluded the NPA failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt she was guilty.
In all these circumstances, the guilt of the employee on this plethora of charges has not been proven. There's also no evidence upon which she could be found guilty on the alternative charge, which is in essence a duplication of the counts in the main charge. She is accordingly found not guilty on both the main and the alternative charges.
So Glynnis Breytenbach said she wants her job back. Well, instead, she ended up in handcuffs. But put a pin on it. Let's go back to the Hawks. So they come back from Parliament, they're now ready to roll out the Hawks, but the Helen Suzman Foundation and Glenister go back to court and they say, no, they're still not independent enough. So the judgment says the following provisions of the SAPS law are inconsistent with the Constitution and are declared invalid because what was included in the Hawks law was that they do certain things in accordance with approved policy guidelines, which would mean the minister can just pass certain policies anytime. And the words subject to any policy guidelines by the minister and approved by Parliament were also scrapped among certain things. So the Constitutional Court still pushed a bit further to make the Hawks slightly even more independent than the comrades had agreed. Because at this point, you remember, the ANC, whatever they decided in Parliament, that's what happened because they had a majority. Now we move forward to 2018, the Zondo Commission of Inquiry takes place, and he comes out with recommendations. And one of the recommendations is we need an anti-corruption body that is completely independent of influence of politicians. This is him speaking at an event after his recommendations had come out, and he wasn't happy that nothing is happening.
PRASA is the entity where Professor Madonsela, as public protector, issued that report called Derailed, which contained numerous adverse findings about maladministration. But as at the time that I was writing my report, my information was that the recommendations that had been made in that report, or at least many of them, had not been implemented. And nobody seems to ask the question, why not? PRASA is the entity where for 6 years there was no permanent CEO, and the various ministers of transport seem to have no problem with that. PRASA is the entity where after 6 years a CEO was appointed in 2021, February or March. And then before the end of 12 months, he was suspended and later dismissed. When he took his dismissal dispute to arbitration, a retired senior judge of the Supreme Court of Appeal said there was no valid reason for him to be dismissed, and said it looked like there was some other agenda why he was dismissed, and he ordered that he be reinstated. He was not reinstated. He was then dismissed for another reason. PRASA is the entity where for 5 years irregular expenditure was going up. It went up from 500 million in the first year, I think up to about 20 billion after 5 years. And it was like there was nobody asking the questions, why do you not stop this expenditure? Because they don't do their job. The people suffer because corruption is continuing. Many of you would have heard recently that the Minister of Transport announced it had been discovered that I think there were more than 3,000 or about 3,000 non-existent workers who had been on the payroll of PRASA, ghost employees. At this stage, I think it's not known how long PRASA may have been paying these ghost employees. Why is this all happening? Where was that money going? PRASA is that entity where the Commission had evidence that an investigator as an auditor was trying to follow money that came from PRASA, was stopped by the Hawks from finishing his job. By the time the Commission finished its work, it didn't know where that money ended because the Hawks stopped him.
Wow, so it does help having the Hawks under the control of the comrades. Now, speaking of employees who get fired because they're starting to investigate too much, let's go back to Glynnis Breytenbach. Now, after she was cleared in the disciplinary hearing, they then came back and pressed criminal charges to try put her in jail because of her investigations.
Glynnis Breytenbach can finally breathe a sigh of release. This week, the now Member of Parliament was acquitted on all charges relating to unauthorised access to and amending official computer content while she was still at the NPA. The judge in the case found Breytenbach and her co-accused and former lawyer, Gerard Wagner, not guilty of any wrongdoing.
Both Gerard and I are very relieved. It's been an unpleasant experience. It's no fun being an accused in a criminal trial. We're both lawyers, both officers of the court, so it was particularly unpleasant, I think.
Yeah.
But we always held the view that the charges were malicious and politically motivated, and we still hold that view.
Yeah.
And we've now been vindicated.
Yeah. You've always said the charges against you were malicious and politically motivated. They'd love to hear more from you. I mean, where do you think they all stem from?
Well, certainly they stem from a desire to protect political or otherwise allies of the previous president. So the charges against Richard Mdluli have not been reinstated. He's not been prosecuted, and in my view there's a case to be answered. There's also the ICT matter that I was ostensibly disciplined for initially. ICT is a Gupta-owned company. That matter has also died in the water since I left. So there was, in my view, a strong case to answer, and nothing's happened there. So both of those prosecutions have stalled, and it's always been my contention that the main reason behind this entire unpleasant experience has been to protect Mdluli, and it's still my view. And in case anyone thinks I have a personal vendetta against Richard Mdluli, I don't. I've never met the man. I believe that there's a prima facie case against him, and like everybody else in this country, he should answer that case. Whether he's acquitted or not is to me quite irrelevant.
Yeah. Let's look at the actual case that was being at play in terms of the deleted documents that were on your computer that were related to mining rights. I mean, you were accused of showing bias in the case, and this was between Kumba Iron Ore in the Sishan mining rights case in Kimberley. Then you were suspended. What happened after that? When did you realize that things were going to get very, very unpleasant with the NPA?
When they called me in to tell me that they were investigating a case against me for abuse of power in the Kumba matter, I mean, it was absolutely laughable. Prosecutors have immense power. You really don't need to abuse it. So then I knew, that things were going to go pear-shaped, and well, that's just, they picked the wrong adversary. I don't like bullies. I never have, and I certainly will never give in to them. So, do what they will.
I don't like bullies, so dala what you must. So I'm showing you Breytenbach because just after the Zondo Commission gave the recommendation saying be independent, and there was Glenister I, II, and III where the court said independence, Breytenbach went on to oppose the law that created IDAC. First is ID, then IDAC. For the same reason, she was saying IDAC is not independent enough. Politicians can play it like a puppet.
Problems with the bill in its current form are far too numerous to mention here, but the main problem with the bill is twofold. One, it does not give the requisite independence that's required in terms of the Constitutional Court judgment of Glenister. So what is happening now is the investigating directorate was established by way of proclamation. It's now being transferred into an act of parliament, but it remains housed within the NPA, which means it can be dissolved by the same parliament with a simple majority of 50% plus one, which is precisely what happened to the Directorate of Special Operations or the Scorpions. So as soon as it's no longer convenient to have it, it will be dissolved very easily. That translates into it's being unable to attract the types of skills that it requires. Nobody's going to leave a good, permanent, well-paying private sector job to go and work for the investigating directorate when we all remember what happened to the Scorpions. So the kind of work, the nature of the beast is that you're going to go after high-profile people, and when it's no longer convenient, you again be faced with losing your job and having to resurrect your life from nothing. So that is a big problem. The second problem is that it does not allow for proper resourcing, not human resourcing nor financial resource. The National Prosecuting Authority needs to be able to negotiate its own budget with Treasury, not through the Department of Justice, and report to Parliament and to Treasury on its budget. While it's housed under the wing of the Department of Justice and therefore under the control of the Minister, the National Prosecuting Authority will never be truly independent. And those issues are not addressed in this bill. The bill is being rushed. It was brought to Parliament in September. From the beginning said that we don't like this bill.
And so it wasn't just DA's Breytenbach that was opposing, but Kenneth Mishwe's party also had this to say.
House Chair, it's undeniable that the Scorpions were a very effective crime-fighting unit, and had they not been disbanded, we would not have the levels of state capture and corruption that we have today. And the ACDP participated in the opposition to the disbanding of the Scorpions. Today we consider this bill, and as we've indicated in the committee, we believe it does not go far enough in setting out the NPA's independence, as well as that of the proposed investigating directorate against corruption. It also fails to deal with the crucial aspects of security of tenure as set out in the Glenister judgments when setting up such anti-corruption agencies. Now, the DA and ACDP submitted a joint submission in an attempt to improve the independence of the investigating directorate and to improve the bill. The appointment process should be transparent and open, allow for nominations and applications, and include a public interview process. And the term of office should be one term for the national director with an increased retirement age of 70. These were eminently reasonable suggestions. Sadly, the committee did not accept the recommendations, mainly due to what was considered time constraints. However, we do believe, regrettably, that far more could have been done to ensure the independence of the NPA and, of course, to ensure the independence of the proposed investigating directorate against corruption. We believe that it is very necessary in view of the high levels of cases that it has to consider, as well as the state capture, that far more could have been done. I thank you.
And so the ANC at this point had a majority. They didn't listen. They formed IDAC and they said, no, we will appoint the head of IDAC. And no, we will have IDAC under minister. And so, as you've come to know, Andrea Johnson, appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, this was her introducing her CV at the ad hoc committee.
I started prosecuting on the 1st of June 1996 at the Magistrates Court in Alberton. I was then moved to the Regional Court in Germiston. early in 1998. And on the 1st of June 1998, Chair, I started as a state advocate at the then Attorney General's office in Johannesburg under then Attorney General de Vries. And in December of 99, I was then promoted to senior state advocate and joined the Directorate Special Operations, colloquially called the Scorpions. At the time, in terms of the region, it was Advocate Gerry Nel, and the Deputy National Director in charge was Advocate Leonard McCarthy. But I reported directly to Advocate Gerry Nel as head of office. I remained there till the doors closed 6 July 2009. However, in that time, on the 1st of April 2004, I became a Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. Around about April or May of 2006, I became a Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, which position I held up until the 28th of February 2022. And I then became the Investigating Director on the 1st of March 2022. One of the more prominent matters, one of the matters that I dealt with together with Advocate Gerry Nel was the investigation and prosecution of corruption allegations against the late Jackie Celebi, who at the time was the National Police Commissioner and the first African head of Interpol. And we saw that matter through to its finality. But in that time, Chair, the DSO was disbanded. And so in July 2009, as with most advocates, we were given an opportunity to choose which Director of Public Prosecution's office you would like to work in. Advocate Nel and I, who are Pretoria-based, chose the office of the DPP Pretoria, also because in October of that year, the matter for trial in the Celebi matter had been set down. And so practically it made sense that we would be in our home base and would be able to deal with the prosecution. And that prosecution was then finalized as it was with the guilty verdict being passed against the late Mr. Celebi, together with a term of imprisonment of 15 years.
And so, as you know from the testimony at Madlanga, that it's been horrible what's happening at IDAC. And so we have the minister, Mamuluku Kubai. Actually, I remember a story a long time ago that her husband was making 3 million a year in the Northwest, running a company that he said he had resigned from. There were people who saw him go to meetings. His name was on invoices. His name was on reports. But she denied that he still worked there because he had resigned. And I don't know where that matter went to. It was never really heard and cleared her. So she's telling us what's happening after everything that's happening at IDAC.
I have, as the minister, placed Mr. Dylan Perumal on suspension from his position as the Chief Investigator of South Africa's Investigative Directorate against Corruption, pending disciplinary action and disciplinary processes. Mr. Brian Badiaki and Mr. Suleiman Buluchan have already been suspended pending disciplinary proceedings.
And the Director of Public Prosecutions, Andy Mutibi, has also announced some interesting developments.
There's been evidence that Johnson has launched an attack against Masemula and Khumalo and so on. You would know that there's a review process. We've concluded the review of matters against General Khumalo, and we have announced that the matters have been withdrawn, albeit provisional. And I know that most of the members of the public are zooming in on the word provisional, but the cases have been withdrawn. The provisional part is really to ensure that where there's still matters that are outstanding, we ensure that we clean them up in terms of the legal process, and we will revert to the public in terms of how we have concluded those. I can confirm that General Masemula's matter is included within the scope of the matters that are under review. But there's other processes to hold her to account. If there's evidence pointing that he has committed criminal action, we'll pursue. She will be pursued criminally. And as I mentioned up there's one case at least that I've mentioned that we are aware of. It's been publicly reported at Zondo Commission. That case will be investigated. We've provided a prosecutor to guide the investigation, and once it's complete, the docket will be presented at an appropriate level for decision. So that's the criminal side. There's a civil leg of it. We will go through the report whenever it becomes available to really assess, what kind of civil action, if any, should be taken. And then there's regulatory and professional, right? She has already been referred, as I've picked up by some of the organizations, to the Legal Practice Council. She'll be dealt with there as a professional. And that is in the interest of ensuring that we don't ultimately wait for the report of Madlanga itself, where we've got evidence that we can use. We need to take immediate action.
So that's the mess at IDAC, which is not very independent. However, a retired judge was appointed only in March this year to oversee IDAC. But now, let's get back to Glynnis Breytenbach. Glynnis Breytenbach introduced the Constitution 21st Amendment Bill to Parliament to create an ACC, an Anti-Corruption Commission, that will be a Chapter 9, meaning the boss of the ACC will be appointed by me and you through our representatives in Parliament and not by a minister or the president. That means they can only be fired by me and you through our representatives in Parliament through an impeachment or something like that. And so it would mean that they can also get resources directly from Treasury, I imagine, so that no minister can squash them by limiting budget, and they'll have the independence to go after people in power without fearing that they're actually going after their own boss. This bill is still at stage 1, introduced in 2024. It will then go to a portfolio committee, then it will go to the National Assembly, then a select committee, then NCOP, and only then the president can sign it. So I imagine along the way there'll be requests for public submissions. Maybe we'll submit something together. Let's see how that goes. And this is what the bill looks like: to amend the Constitution so as to establish the ACC as an institute supporting and strengthening constitutional democracy in the Republic, and to provide for matters connected therewith. And so there goes the bill that we'll see if the other political parties actually support it. And so that's how we got here at the IDAC mess. So, my biblical reaction: the king establishes the land by justice, but he who receives bribes overthrows it. So over the last 25 years, it is absolutely clear that the comrades are committed to not having an independent corruption fighting entity. And they have done the least that they could do. With IDAC, they said, no, we're out of time. We can't make it more independent. We need the president to find Andrea and put her there. We need the minister. When the minister says, go after this one, we need Andrea to know that's her boss telling her this. We need to be able to choose, rather than like the public protector, who you and I can sit and watch people getting interviewed and there's now pressure to pick the right person, as opposed to when we just find out that someone is dropped on us. It's so much better when we can see what's going on, and we know that if they account to Parliament, at least your party will be in there watching as well. And if one party is defending, there'll be an oppositional party that will make a noise and expose things. And so the ANC has fought this, and so let's see if we end up with an independent corruption fighting entity, because the ANC has fought for 25 years, but now that they're below 51%, let's see if we actually get one, because the fight against corruption will only start then. And you establish a land that way, and when you receive bribes, you overthrow it. Do you think it's a coincidence that the Scorpions were disbanded in 2008, and 2008 is also the last time that the economy grew It's also the last time that we ever created jobs in South Africa compared to all the time before. No, it's not, because a land is established by justice. What kind of silly investors do you think are investing in a country where they can see that the leaders of that country want to make sure they never get caught when they steal? They want to be able to terrorize people who are coming after them. Of course, no investor is going to be creating jobs like that. You don't establish a country like that. So I think one of the greatest things that can happen is that if the Breytenbach bills go through and stirs happen, people who are specialized, trained, independent, resourced, and no politician can fire them, I believe corruption will start to go down and we'll see a lot of powerful people go to jail the same way that the Scorpions put Jackie Silibi, the police commissioner of that time, in jail for 15 years. So let's watch and let's see how it develops. Comrades don't like law and order because they are still stuck in liberation time, where the police are the enemy, where law and order are the enemy. They haven't grown out of that. Up till now, deep down in their hearts, they consider law and order the enemy. So they will sabotage their independence, and they are corrupt to the core. The African National Corruption Party will never allow an independent anti-corruption institute. Good thing now they don't have enough power to impose it and dictate it upon us like they used to. Let's just hope the other parties are not so afraid of getting caught themselves that they sabotage us having an anti-corruption commission. So South Africans, please vote properly. Please stop voting for corrupt people, because otherwise you will throw tantrums when you are watching Madlanga Commission going down as if you didn't vote for Andrea Johnson. And I'm not trying to knock you down, but I'm just asking, please, can we fix our country, please? No man can serve two masters, for either you love the one and hate the other, or you despise the one and honor the other. You can't serve God and Karl Marx. So let's make history together. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's hear your thoughts at the bottom.